All right, Marques Brownlee, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
Good.
So I'm curious. I've followed your channel for a while, but I definitely did not follow it in the beginning when you were reviewing software on your laptop. You've been doing it for a long time. What would you attribute your success to on YouTube?
Well, I do tech videos, so I think the obvious answer there is tech has been interesting and important for so long that just being in the tech space generally for that long has done a lot for it.
Yeah.
The channel itself, I mean, there's plenty of other successful tech channels, but it has its own unique style. It has a consistent voice. It's been me for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I guess just if you combine all those factors, consistency plus tech staying interesting, that's mainly it.
Was there any particular inflection point where it really took off?
No, but I get asked that a lot about can I point to a certain video or a date or month or something, like what happened to go from like nothing to where it is now? But from to this day, I look back and it's mainly just like you can look at charts even. It's just a sort of an upward slope from 0 videos to 1,000 videos. It's obviously when you get to certain points, like the reputability, is that a word? The reputability of the channel becomes more significant. So you're more likely to subscribe to a tech guy with 1 million subscribers talking about something you should buy than a guy with 100. So that's helped. But I feel like consistency again is major.
Really? Because I mean, I follow a couple subreddits on like weird YouTube channels, and there are people that have 1,000 videos reviewing elevators, simple, boring shit.
Well, there's always going to be like niche stuff which people will get really into, but I think like when it comes to something as personal as a tech product, you kind of want some sort of history to go on or sort of a reputation to look back on when it's like 1,000. Phones are $1,000 now, so I think that's helped being able to have a history of stuff.
And because in the beginning you were just doing software, right?
Right.
For the most part.
Free software.
Yeah. And then did you start getting phones sent to you in like the early days of influencer culture?
I remember early days pretty well. It was, I'd started with all this laptop stuff. Yeah. So the first stuff that got sent to me was laptop accessories, a mouse, a keyboard, that kind of stuff. Some paid software. I would get like a key for $30 off a $50 piece of software, and I could have that access. So that was awesome. Phone stuff didn't happen until much later. I remember the first event I ever went to was a Samsung event in New York City where I met a YouTuber for the first time. That was probably like 6 years in. So it took a while.
You were in it for a while.
Yeah.
I grew up getting like pirated keys off of LimeWire and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Did you ever dip into that and think like, man, maybe I should review Final Cut Pro on my channel?
Oh man. At one point I definitely did a whole Hackintosh thing.
Oh, you did?
Which was definitely not, kosher, I guess, but the Hackintosh world is a whole world. So I was curious about it and I got into it. I was never really into downloading pirated music or any of that stuff, but I could imagine that was its own world for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I was curious because as a kid, you have no money when you're starting out your channel.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you grew up with that hacker ethos, like have you done a teardown video before or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, I used to be much more into building PCs and taking them apart and upgrading them. I had a Mac, there's the Tower Desktop Mac Pro.
The G5?
Yeah, I did. I was replacing the GPU and upgrading the RAM and all that. And I had an XPS Tower that had the same thing too. But I guess I never was really fully into the building process as much as I was the final result. How well that finished product would work for you.
But when I watch your videos now, you're pretty into the stats of it all. All those like hard metrics with the products, right?
Yeah.
So it attracts you in some way.
Yes. I mean, I think if you take a huge step back and just look at what the videos are about, period, especially with the reviews, it's like, how good is this product that this company made going to work for you? And there's a whole bunch of different ways to measure that. And I'm trying to measure that. So there's a lot of numbers.
So what are those metrics? Well, like I've heard you talk about it before in the context of like, this is a feature that's going to maybe like spark some interest, and this is a feature that I'm going to use every day.
Yeah, like gimmick versus daily. Yeah, that's one way. I mean, you can pick up a phone and use a really cool feature for 2 seconds. You're like, whoa, that's amazing. But when you actually buy the phone, are you going to use that feature? I'm trying to evaluate that.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of benchmarks and things people do, like how fast is the storage? How much RAM does it have? How fast is this chip? And that stuff is useful, obviously, if you have more demanding needs for your phone. But a lot of it is literally just evaluating, like, is this a gimmick or is this really going to be daily driver material?
One thing I was talking about on a recent podcast is how it's very hard for the market to recognize how good a product's quality is. Like just that actual feel, like when you when you touch an iPhone for the first time.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, how do you go about quantifying that when you're making video?
I mean, it's really, sometimes I see my job as like a professional user.
Okay.
Like I really just have to use it, and so you get the briefing obviously, and the breakdown of all the new features and what is new versus what's not new, and you can compare it to things you've used before. But at the end of the day, like you actually have to use it to figure out if it's actually useful.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of use cases. They'll tell me about a new feature and they'll tell me exactly. There's some New York for you.
Yeah.
How it, like the ideal use case scenario, how it works well. This came up recently because I did a video with an LG phone that came out. Mm-hmm. Has this feature where you wave your hand over it and do these gestures to open up apps and things like that. It's called the G8.
Okay.
And like on the surface, like this is cool. This is like future type stuff. Yeah. But then you actually use it and you're like, all right. So I don't know what I have stuff on my hands. Maybe I'm cooking, but I just want to like open the YouTube app real quick and search for something. Like, now what? Like I have to still type in what I want to search. Like there's limits to the usefulness of that. So that for me fell in the gimmick bucket just because using it actually changed my mind.
But then what about the features where you thought it was great and it didn't catch on? Are there examples of that?
Well, there's lots of examples of things that are great to me that aren't a big deal to other people. Like I love high resolution, really nice screens.
Okay.
And you can hand me a phone with a 1440p AMOLED great display, and you could hand me a phone with a 1080p LCD display, and I'd look and I'd immediately want the better one.
Yeah.
But to an average person, a lot of times, whatever, like they both look fine to me. Is one of them's bigger. I like the bigger one. So sometimes there will be things that I'll evaluate. I'll be like, you gotta get this because it's got a great screen, and it won't matter to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But at least then you can calibrate yourself to what I've in the past liked a lot. So in the past, if I keep saying like, I really like these phones because of their screens, and you know from your past experience that screens aren't a big deal to you, then you can at least say, all right, I'll discount this point because screens aren't my thing.
Okay. Yeah, because I've kind of wondered if we're going to reach a point of complete diminishing returns with smartphones, right? You're like, oh man, iPhone 10 or whatever, like this is awesome. iPhone 11, is it 100% better? No. Unlikely, right?
Yeah.
So like, do you think we're going to reach peak smartphone?
Peak smartphone. It's a common question.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
And the only reason I don't is because I've heard that question for the past like 5 years of smartphones. And then the next year I'm like, well, that's new. And I think it's mostly because the trends change. Like there was a thinness trend a couple years ago where it was like, we got a 9mm thin, and then 8.9, and then 8.1, and then 7.9. Holy crap, there's a 6mm thin phone. Have we reached peak smartphone? And then it changed to like, okay, now we want these bezel-less phones. Yep. So thickness, whatever, it's just going to be thin. That's just the way it is. But now, can we get a 90% screen to body ratio? Can we get this notch smaller? Can we get 93%, 95? Eventually we're going to be like, have we hit peak? Like we got the whole screen.
Yeah.
And then the next trend is going to happen. I don't know what that next trend is, but I feel like because I've observed these cycles over the past couple of years, it doesn't seem likely that it's just we're going to get this end product of like the perfect phone. I mean, maybe we will. That'd be great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't.
I mean, I know a lot of people are holding on to iPhone basically 5 form factor.
Well, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Phones are better and they last longer than they ever did. So in that sense, we're closer to peak smartphone because your iPhone, if you buy an iPhone XS now, that phone's probably going to be good for like 4 years. Like legitimately, iOS has gotten better. So it's true. You can hang on to an older phone longer than you used to be able to.
Yeah.
But that's also something tech companies got to think about when they make their next product.
Yeah. So what do you make of these new trend, like the folding things, like new trends right now?
There's a lot of folding one is one of those interesting ones because I'm trying to imagine the future of like why folding phones matter. At this point, like generation 1 folding phones are like, all right, proof of concept. Like you can technically fold it, but there's a big ugly crease in the middle and these bezels are huge. And, you know, it's not really, it doesn't seem that useful yet.
Okay.
But that challenge is to like, okay, go like 8-9 years down the road where it's like, oh yeah, you have a tablet and a phone and you just unfold your phone and it becomes a tablet. Like in that world, it was worth it. Like 2019 folding phones were worth it because we got to that point.
Yeah.
So if we get to that point someday, then I think it'll be worth it. But
okay. So then I've noticed you filmed a bunch of Tesla videos, right? Based on, you know, the ratio of types of content on your channel, are you just betting electric vehicles is the next big trend?
Partially, yes. And partially, I just love the thing.
Yeah, I mean, but that's like a cool signal, right? Like I remember people wouldn't shut up about their iPhones when they got them. And the same thing is true for the Model S.
Yes. And that's a comparison I've heard, like the Tesla is the iPhone of cars again. Like it's kind of just that next wave, and electric does seem like it's the future. You see all these big companies like, yeah, we're going to go electric by 2028. I'm like, great, someday. I'm a huge fan of the Tesla, and it's kind of like a perfect segue into me. I've always been into cars, but like I'm 25. Like how into cars could I be really? Right. I don't drive all kinds of cars and stuff, but the Tesla is a perfect segue into cars because it's a tech product.
Yeah.
It has all these tech features. It's basically a tech company. So it was sort of a natural segue into the car world.
Yeah, because I've just been curious, like on the performance side, how much it actually matters. Because if you look around, you know, obviously the Model S is nuts to drive, right?
Yeah.
But then, you know, the Prius is... Have you driven a Prius before?
Yeah, I have.
Not the most exciting.
It works. It gets you there. Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I've been kind of wondering where the EV market will end up going, because the Model 3 is also pretty quick.
Yeah.
But, you know, what's your impression of like the low end EV market?
The thing about EV is you still get like that quick torque. So even though the performance from like, you know, your 60 to 90 might not be like high end gas car territory, most of the acceleration and like merging and quick things you do on an EV, even a low end EV, is still like zippy. Like you still feel like you're in that like zippy go-kart type of feel. Even in like, I drove a Model 3 when it first came out. And so it was rear wheel drive. I'm pretty sure the 0 to 60 is like 5.5 seconds or something, which is fine. But like that car felt quick. Okay. Like I'd step on the pedal and I felt like zippy, like I was in Model S. So, even low-end EVs will have that feel, and that's attractive to people. I think a lot of people overrate how much sound matters. Like in the high-end car market, everyone cares how their car sounds. But for 90% of people who are just
you mean like, interior or the actual engine sound?
Yeah, the engine sound.
Okay.
Like when I hit the pedal, I want to hear it working for me. Like that's a common like resistance to the EVs. So. But yeah, I think for like 90% of people, or taxis, or just commuter vans, or just basic transportation, like silence is great.
Huh. And in terms of features within the car?
They tend to be ahead.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, maybe I'm just because I'm looking mostly at Tesla, but like the amount of things, you know, having a smartphone controlled app where you can summon the car to you, like all these remote start stop features in gas cars are great, but when you look at the amount of, I mean, Tesla's a tech company, so you see all kinds of tech features in the car.
Yeah. I guess I just kind of wonder, like, where, because you spend so much time reviewing products, both like smartphones and cars and stuff, like you kind of get an impression of the bleeding edge, but I'm wondering like where you're seeing it going, like things that are just popping up where you're like, oh, that's actually a super cool feature that people aren't talking about or thinking about right now in the context of cars.
I mean, honestly, just going electric, and the number one thing you think about is charging. Where do you charge it? Like how fast does it charge? How long does the battery last? Things like that. Those basic questions. The more like those big companies think about answering those questions, like Ford and like Chevy and those big guys, the more you realize how far ahead Tesla is, but how far there is to go to actually make EVs useful for most people. But I think, the basic premise is you're just going electric. Like
right.
You just put a battery in it, you charge it, and you drive it the same way a normal car drives. But I don't think there's any sort of magic sauce to it other than that. You just kind of have to get the basics down.
So it's more like on the infrastructure side is really important, getting it on. Yeah, obviously.
Which is less flashy and like, you know, magic feature that's winning the market over. But it's like that's what you have to nail to make a good EV.
Okay. And so, you know, now you said you're 25.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now that you're 25, do you feel like there's going to be a point where you have less of a pulse on like the new cool
I'm
stuff?
so scared of that. Yeah.
Dude, I'm 29 and I'm like, oh no.
Do you feel that at 29? Like, I don't know. I'm scared of being that like old guy who's like out of touch. Like, but at least I think that process will be slower for me because I'm so immersed in it now.
Yeah.
Like with music, maybe I'm already there. Like new music comes out that like, I tried to listen to like the Billboard 100, like whatever the other day. And I was just like, this is objectively bad. Like I can't do this. I clearly am out of the loop, but, I guess with tech, I don't know, maybe I'm a little more immersed. So that might take longer.
Yeah. Or it's just near and dear to your heart. So it really matters.
Yeah. Or I'll just, well, there's also hope because there are plenty of much older, you know, tech journalists and tech YouTubers who are doing their thing. So, I mean, if you stay like in that world, it's kind of just part of what you're doing every day.
No. And I know plenty of older people who are way more into music than I am and like catch things early.
Yeah.
But it is this like core fear as a, you know, creative person where you're like, dude, am I old school right now?
Am I out of it? I out of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you, does that fear like motivate you to try like weirder YouTube stuff? Or are you like kind of, you know, this kind of phone, whatever video works and I'm just going to keep banging it out?
I don't know if, I mean, I'm definitely trying to diversify the breadth of coverage, you might call it. I don't think that's out of fear of like forgetting what's popular. I think that's just because like I'm interested in other things. So here's other ways to talk about them. So there's the reviews and there's smartphone stuff, but there's also the car videos now, which is the autofocus series. But there's also like, I'm into production naturally because that's what I'm doing all the time. So I'm doing this whole like spaces series where I'm talking to other creators and how they use their space. I'm ideally starting a podcast pretty soon where I can just talk with people about things like this. So I think that just comes from like all the other things that I've become interested in,
of course,
through, you know, making tech videos.
Interesting. So what else would be on the podcast?
I want to talk to other creators. Yep. That's like probably the main thing because that's not something that is readily available to me. I think like when you get to a certain place in this creative world, there's no longer like an article you can go read to figure out how to do something. Like when you're starting YouTube, you can figure out like what's the best DSLR for $1,000 and then buy it and find the lens that works best with it and then start from there. But like when I'm trying to figure out like, how do I best like start a new series given the current uploads and like the pace of, you know, the way things are moving, like all these nuanced questions that don't necessarily have answers, but that other creative people think about too. Just talking with people about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds a lot like just strategy, right? Where like two things can simultaneously be true, but you have to pick one. Yeah. And that can be a little intimidating, I guess, and helpful. Yeah. So like,
it's less math, more just like, I don't know. It's just strategy.
Yeah. Strategy and like creative insight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what are you going to try and like innovate in your podcast in any way? Because what I'm kind of fishing for is like, you know, obviously YouTube video, right? Like what are the other mediums that you're like testing out to feel like, oh, maybe there's an audience here, or like maybe I can break ground here?
Yeah. I feel like video as a medium is my favorite by far. So I don't think about new mediums as much as I think of new ways to do video, new topics, new formats within video. Podcasting being like a sort of an auxiliary way to also talk. Is that Bixby? I don't know. That is Bixby.
I've never even heard it in real life.
And I've never intentionally triggered Bixby. So that's like the third or fourth time that it's thought I've been talking to it. Where was I? Oh, I mean, video. Yeah, I think I'm still trying to figure out the whole video thing generally, and that might be a battle I never win. But I feel like that's going to be taking up most of my time is doing different types of videos.
Okay. And so, have you tried 360? Have you tried VR? Like, have you tried these new formats?
I have. I've tried one. I've published one 360 video.
Okay,
and it was one that I thought was a really good idea. It was a studio tour. So it would be like you're sort of moving around the studio, but you can also look around and see what's behind you and around you. So you sort of feel like you're in that space. That's a good use of VR, and that was fun. But that was one of those things where like I struggled to find other genuinely productive uses for it in my case. Yeah. It's awesome for games. I love it for games. I love it for other stuff, but for video, it's been sort of a head scratcher.
Well, we did a podcast with Jessica Brillhart, who's a VR creator in New York. And it's a difficult storytelling challenge because like with film, you're inherently like controlling the viewpoint of your audience. Yeah. And with games, you explore. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So very like natively fits in. But even just like the prep involved in like shooting a 360 video, like right now there are a bunch of like wires and shit dangling all over the place.
It's no big deal when the camera can control that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's another challenge. I mean, the rig we used was really cool. Like we could have, basically like it's not like literally following me around, but it went from place to place, and we had a couple setup places around the studio. So the video would move between these places and you could follow me around. But yeah, that's like, that to me was like peak 360. Like I figured it out. This is the best use of 360 in my case.
Real estate.
Yeah. But outside of that, it's been like maybe just tours in general. Like a lot of car stuff is hard because it's such a small space. Maybe getting a smaller rig in there where you can sort of look around as if you're in the car. That's tough. Yeah. But
do you feel limited by cameras in any way at this point?
Only slightly. Okay. And I feel like I'm like not even allowed to complain because the cameras I use are so obscene. But on occasion, I wish the camera had autofocus. I wish the camera was smaller. I wish the camera's battery lasted longer. But those are like pretty minor things as far as, because I can still get the image I want eventually if I work hard enough.
You don't have autofocus on all your cameras?
I don't.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it just the lens or the actual camera?
The camera essentially, it has a really, really poor autofocus system, but it's a RED camera, and no one uses autofocus for RED cameras, so they don't really work on it. So it's not good. So it's manual focus all the time. And that has its downsides, obviously, especially when we're doing car stuff, trying to do fixed focus car stuff when the car moves all the time.
It's tricky.
There's a lot of weird things with fixed focus, but we've messed with rigs where we can do remote follow focus stuff and all kinds of other hacks to get around it. Okay. But yeah, that's like one of those weird things.
Do you do much drone stuff?
A little bit for cars. It's funny because I always wanted to do drone stuff, but for the longest time I was mostly doing like handheld gadgets. Yeah. So it felt like, what do I need a drone for? Yeah. Like it's just going to fly away from me holding an iPad. Like that's not that compelling. But now that we're doing car stuff, yes, there's plenty of use for drones.
Okay. Have you mounted anything to the hood? I don't even, like those giant gimbals. Have you tried that out yet?
We've gotten a little into that. Like we have this whole, I guess we're always trying to make, setups for scenarios. Yeah. And I think the next scenario setup we're working on is like the chase car. How do you shoot a car from any angle you want from another car? Yeah. So you can obviously go out the side because there's a window where you can get a sliding door. We shot out the back, so we have the lift gate go up, and we can go like hold a gimbal out of the back. But shooting the back of a car in front of you is hard because there's a sloped windshield, so it's distorted. So do you hang out the side, but then you're off axis? So there's kind of a weird problem with shooting the back of a car. Okay, but that's like one of those things we're working on. I guess putting something on the hood would be a way to shoot a car in front of you, but then you're fixed in your height, so you can't really go low. But then there's those camera cars that have a jib on top of it. And you can go all kinds of angles. So that might be fun. But as of right now, that's pretty early.
Yeah, this is a funny creator problem because industry people have figured this out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like if you see like professional, you know, like Tesla shoots, like they got it locked down.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like Marques, individual YouTube guy, like just to fly to LA and like film on the PCH, like the question is like, how do you do that? And so those are the kinds of questions that you're curious about.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's not like a YouTuber network where you just like call up whatever.
There are YouTube friends that also have similar questions. Like we can talk about it all we want. I've had a couple friends who are obviously in LA because that's where almost everyone is. But and we talk about gear all the time and like production strategy in a way. Like how do you shoot these things? Yeah. We've collaborated on one of the last things we did was when we interviewed Elon. We did a factory tour. Yeah. Which was like, how do you shoot a factory tour with like two people walking through it? Do you just have one person hold the camera while you're out, or do you have a person next to it? You know, that was a whole thing where we had to figure out how to do that. But yeah, and the industry's got it all locked up. Yeah,
but it's also, I think what a lot of people could get from you is like storytelling techniques, because that at the core of it, like obviously the products are cool, right? But like you're a storyteller too, right? And so when you're going to go and do an interview with Elon, and I saw most of your interviews are like 10 minutes, 15 minutes long. Yeah. Right. I assume it's cut down to.
Yeah. And a lot of it also is because they're really busy people. Yeah. And that's just all the time that we get with them and then all we have. But yeah, it's like a happy medium of talking a little longer than a 5-minute video. Yeah.
Which is a nice format for you too. Like we've tried both. And I mean, I'm so impressed with Rogan. He's like 3-hour videos and people are into it.
Yeah. He's amazing.
So when you think about like, okay, maybe we should do a product scenario, right? Like, how do you think about storytelling in the case of a review?
Context. So what came before it? What came next to it? What it's up against? And momentum in a way. So let's say a new phone comes out. You naturally compare it to the phone that came before it. And then you compare it to other phones around it and how much those stepped forward versus how much it stepped forward. And that right there can be enough of an interesting story for a lot of devices that come out. I remember when iPad Pro came out. Yeah. That story was like, iPad was already so far ahead in tablets. And then iPad Pro took a massive step forward versus the last iPad. Like, this is obscene how much, like, there is no other $1,300 tablet I would even consider. Like, that's alone in its category, which is really fascinating. So yeah, I guess those two things, like the context of other products that exist next to it and what came before it.
Okay. And when it comes to storytelling of you as a person, like expanding it, you know, like all the gross words, like personal brand and all that stuff, where do you go? Like, how do you tell your story? And then how do you fit in what your future plans and hopes are?
I guess I do less of that because I consider tech the star of the show. Okay. I think I do inject my own personal humor or perspective on occasion just because it's fun, keeps it interesting. And that's its own challenge. But I've always considered tech the star of the show, and in any way I can, I try to make that the main story.
Interesting. Yeah. And so that will just continue to drive future projects for you.
Yeah. I mean, the one string that ties everything together is it's coming from me. So it's always the same perspective. So like when you see a new car video, like with Top Gear, for example, you know that guy has driven these cars before, so he's going to think of it in the context of all those other cars. Okay. So when I do a car video, you know, I'm going to compare it to the other 4 or 5 cars I've driven, which are electric. So like that's the difference between, you know, a car video from me and someone else. But at the end of the day, the car is the thing. Like that's what I'm talking about and sharing with people. But I guess I'm probably underweighting how important my own personal voice is, but I really try to make the tech the star of the show.
Well, I think it's the focus in your video. I appreciate the modesty, but like there are I don't know how many million YouTube channels of people reviewing phones.
True, very true.
So you stood out in some way. So you got like 100+ questions from Twitter.
Sure.
I want to answer some of them. Okay. We're going to skip the middle initial for 10 million subscribers.
Yes, of course.
But there are a lot of best practices around YouTube. you may have answered these before, but Marco Castro asked, what advice do you have for new creators on YouTube?
New creators. New creators being pretty broad, because you can be a new creator in tech or a comedy or a new photographer. Or, there's all kinds of new creators. But on YouTube, generally, like if I was starting over today, I would kind of do a lot of what I'm doing now, which is like you take your inspiration from other places, but you always have to come back to your own voice and your own perspective. Don't try to be something else that already exists, or there won't be any reason to watch it. It already exists. So find your own new angle, your own new voice, your own new way of showing or talking about things.
Yeah.
And then get started. And a lot of it just comes to luck, and YouTube's kind of saturated. The consistency is very important.
When do you think you found your voice as a creator?
I think super early.
Really?
I've always been like, I want crispy video. I want high quality. I know what I want. Like, I think that came at the very beginning, even when I was, doing these tutorial videos.
Yeah, I watched a couple. They were fun.
Oh God. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, I love going, like you went through puberty on YouTube.
Essentially. Yeah. I did all these tutorial videos, which are just screencasts. So it's just my screen and a mouse moving. And I was obsessed with getting the highest frame rate possible and the smoothest motion blur of my cursor on the screen. In a like that, it's so stupid, but like I've always wanted that production to facilitate the story as best as possible. I want the quality to be like as realistic as it can be, so that it's not a distraction.
Yeah,
and that's still the way it is. Like the whole almost like shtick is like overproduced, like really
filming it on a webcam is a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. Overly realistic, but to the point where like if you look at this video on your screen, you'll feel the closest to actually holding it in real life. Like that's the goal. So I think that, I don't know if that's my voice or just my style, but I found that to be a priority pretty early.
Well, I think it's kind of a combination, right? Because you have your taste, which I think the world has decided is good.
Sure.
And then just your like hardened opinion that this is going to be super high quality.
Right.
Right. And so did you grow up with these like values given to you, or is it a personal thing you just were born with?
I guess it must have been instilled in me in some way. I mean, I've always been into tech, and tech has always had an emphasis on like, we're the best, we're the highest quality.
But that like hardcore, like this is the highest quality mentality.
That's a great question. I guess it's just what I decided I wanted at some point. I never really thought about that. It seems like it would be everyone's goal when I think about it. Like striving for the highest quality production, it was a no-brainer to me. And I guess it's when you end up in the position where you're able to, use really high-end equipment and like you can make more of what you want because of the position you're in.
Yeah.
It's even more of a no-brainer because the barrier is lower. But I guess, that challenge to make like the perfect video is like, so the air quotes for audio listeners, like that's always probably going to be a moving goalpost.
Yeah, you're always reaching for it and it's always slipping away. But there's something innate in you, right? And I think in a lot of people who are, maybe I wouldn't go so far as always calling people perfectionists, but to like want to do it over again and over again and over again until it's just right. And
that's a thing that creators have to overcome, and that a lot of times you don't want to. Like if you end up like, I would consider myself borderline like perfectionist in some stuff. I remember doing like SAT stuff where it was like, okay, you have to write this essay and you're going to get the topic and like you have to write it right then. Be like, I want to think about this for a couple of days before I actually put a pen to paper, and like you just have to spit out 3 pages and hopefully it's good enough. Like that's kind of the way YouTube is. Like a new phone just came out, go. Like you don't get to sit on this for a while. Like you form the best thing you can. And if it's 95% there and it's done, that's better than 99% there and still working on it. That's a barrier for me. Like I wish I could take more time with a lot of stuff. But tech just moves fast. So you just kind of have to evolve your production and ideally make the best thing you can.
And do you follow your your listeners? Do you follow your gut when it comes to making choices? Like, is there like a data-driven approach to what kind of videos you're making?
No, I'd say it's almost no data at all. You get
Awesome.
you get comments of people who are like, this part of the video was cool, I enjoyed that, or like you could have spent more time on, I wish you'd gone into this more, or I was wondering about this and I'm glad you addressed it. Like certain things like that.
Okay.
And I guess the only data it comes down to is like, I made a 6-minute video on this phone, but I left out these 3 things. I wonder if an 8-minute video would have been watchable. Like knowing, you know, all the other things that go into YouTube and retention and how long people watch and the attention span of the internet. I guess that's all data, but at the end of the day, I'm just like, I guess, I probably could have included that. Or maybe I didn't have to go into that much detail about this new camera. It's almost the same as last year. Yeah. Like that kind of stuff. Wow, a 12-minute video could have been 9 minutes and said almost the same thing. Information density is my like writing challenge. I'm trying to fit as much structurally sound information that's like followable to most people as possible, which in tech is, I don't know if that's more or less of a challenge, probably more.
Well, it's tough to decide what's most valuable to people.
That's mainly it. Like a lot of people the best comments you get really, or that I get, are from people who've never seen the videos before. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, you know, these are videos for like the mainstream buyer, like not for the hardcore tech person. But all the information that goes into saying those top level things, the way I said them, came from all the depth of using the device and all the hardcore stuff that I left out. So in a way, it feels like, oh, I should just include everything so that they know that I'm like really into what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm legit, guys, I swear. But it becomes less presentable that way. It becomes verbose that way. Like I can say the same thing 5 different ways, but the shortest, most succinct, complete way is usually the best way. So that's what I've been trying to do.
That's kind of the mark of someone who really knows what they're talking about too. Like if you can teach it to someone who's 10 years old, it's true, then you can explain it. And it's also the selling point of a lot of great companies, you know, Apple being absolutely foremost. All right. Before we go more into the YouTube questions, dude, how do you deal with YouTube comments?
I think people really hate YouTube comments, and for whatever reason, it hasn't been that bad for me. Okay. Now I can say lately, meme culture has made its appearance in my comment section far more often in the past couple months for an unnamed reason. Yeah. I'll just say it's Will Smith's fault. But I think the comment section's actually been pretty helpful and pretty great for me for the past couple of years. And whether that's like, because I can also separate the comment section into kind of 3 categories. Hour 1 of upload, which is like useless. It's mainly just people saying either first or reacting to the title and thumbnail and not actually watching the video, or just like getting something in to hopefully get a response. Like the first hour is not really very useful. Then there's like hour 2 through 24, which is like people watching the video and being somewhat thoughtful before leaving what I'd consider a useful comment. And then there's people who are finding it in search. So this is no longer subscribers. This is people who were looking for something about this device, found this video, clicked it hoping for something, and left a comment based on what they watched. Those are the most useful comments. So if you can divide that, like if all you're reading is the first 3 hours of comments, you're like, this is useless, I hate YouTube comments. Yeah. But if you can sort of stitch those out into like what's coming from what audience, then it can actually be somewhat productive, I think, for me.
Yeah, I always struggle with the personal attacks.
Yeah. Where it's I think they just kind of get drowned out, and that's probably another benefit of where the channel is. Like people just bury that stuff, which is pretty great.
That's great. Yeah. And you didn't get it when you were a kid?
I definitely did, and I ignored it.
Oh, good for you, man.
I think I built a thick skin from that, and now it's just kind of, it probably still exists, and I just ignore it.
That's fucking awesome. Okay, so Austin Ryder asks, in the early years of the channel, Marques took a several-month hiatus from YouTube, but then came back with a new video format and seemingly renewed drive. What happened during those months off?
That's a great, very dedicated. Very few people know that. That was when I was in high school, And that was my senior year. And I just had to finish, get my grades up, college applications, the last year of Ultimate, like 3 days a week practices for hours. Like that was just like, I don't have time. I want to make videos so bad, but if I do, I'm going to get in that rabbit hole again, and I'm going to try to make 5 videos a week, and I'm just not going to have the time for the things that matter right now. So that was the end of high school, where I was applying to colleges, going to all these things and interviews and pre-college and all this stuff, SATs, the whole deal.
Okay. And the renewed drive was just excitement.
The new drive was like, hell yes, I'm back. 5 days a week. Let's go. College, no schedule. I'm in it.
Yeah.
I'm in it. Yeah. That was a pretty good time.
Okay. Right on. A bunch of people asked the same question. Winston asked, what's your daily schedule? Because I'm particularly curious because you also maintain a level of fitness for Ultimate.
Yeah. Yeah. I practiced last night. My daily schedule. So I would separate into weekdays and weekends.
Okay.
Weekdays, I guess, are divided again into production days or pre-production, post-production days. Production days are filming, editing, the meat of making videos and writing especially. And pre-production or post-production days are more of like the inbox, the strategy, the what comes next, the travel, all that sort of stuff that comes in between the videos. And then there's nights, which are either like the leagues I play in or practice, or so I play for the pro ultimate team for New York. We had practice last night on Randall's Island. It was cold, so cold. And then weekends are ultimate. I don't work on weekends, and that used to be a thing. I would just work in between frisbee, but frisbee happens on weekends. So that's traveling, that's playing, that's resting, that's like disconnected from the internet type stuff.
And so you train by practicing?
Yes.
There's no like other regiment
involved? I have a gym in my basement. I like ask anyone who's like around me a lot. I'm usually there at night.
Oh, okay.
But as far as like playing a lot, that's kind of the best training you can get. So yeah. That's where I spend a lot of time.
And so in your gym, what are you doing? Squats? What are you doing?
I have a bike. I have the treadmill, but then I have a lot of free weights. I believe in free weights. I don't have that many machines. So it's mostly just, the dumbbells and I don't even know the bar is called that.
Oh, parallel bars?
No, you're standing in it. And it's just I don't know.
To do dips and stuff?
To do squats or to do, I don't know the names of any of these things.
Like a deadlift? Like one of those?
Yeah, like a deadlift. But I don't know what the bar is called.
Hexagon thing.
Yes, that thing. Does it have a name?
So it's like a deadlift. I'm sure it does.
It probably has a name.
Let's call it a hex bar.
Hex bar. Yeah, you got a hex bar.
Yeah, sure.
Got some plates. So yeah, that's like some of the time, but then eventually you just have to throw, and I don't want to get into like ultimate advice, but like
I saw you have a scar on your hand. Is that ultimate related?
That is ultimate related. In college went to go lay out to get a defensive play, and I on the turf skidded forward and snapped my finger in half. So I got a little plate and screws in there now. Fix that bone. Strongest bone in my body now. Reinforced.
That's great. Yeah, I got screws in my shoulder. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
All right. Ahmad Khan asks, are there any problems that you see or face that you really wish engineers or developers would solve?
Engineers or developers? I mean, we're kind of on it. they're kind of on it. A lot of times there's like the beginning, like folding phones, for example, like you kind of see the beginning of like some potential and you're like, oh, I hope they go all in on that. That could be really cool in the future. But generally, like it's all being worked on. I wish some of it was being worked on more than it is. I'm reviewing a lot of phones right now whose cameras are just not close to the Pixels camera in particular. And I know they could get closer. I know they could put a little more into that, but they don't. And that's their own choice and their own priority.
Yeah.
But they totally could. So stuff like that, that's just like things that I prefer in some devices I wish were more of a priority. But generally, I think we live in a pretty good world. Nothing really sucks anymore. You know, like the tech we use, even at the lower end, just kind of works pretty well.
Yeah. No, it's very solid. I haven't upgraded my phone for that reason.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah, which is great.
It's like, could use a better camera, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So One question was from a startup founder, Chris Giordano. He asked, any tips on how to engage with influencers when you're a very early stage startup with little or no money?
Yeah. My biggest tip would be to offer something that would make it's got to be a win-win for everyone involved. So even if you're not a startup, even if you're like a company who's just not into influencer marketing yet, the whole idea of creators working with companies is obviously they need the financial support, but also they want to be able to make something that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to make. So whether they're given access to something or they're given a behind the scenes look at something like that, you don't have to like always pay them a lot, but like if you can get something like that suddenly their audience is really into, that's a win too. So if that's a win for the audience because they got a better video, that's a win for the creator because they could make something better that their audience now gets to see, and that's a win for the company involved because now your stuff is in front of a new audience. So even if you don't have the financial means to just dive right into paying for ads, you can always offer something that can make a video better. And if you do, like, I also notice a lot that not a lot of research is done. They kind of just have like this list of tech channels and they just sort of blanket carpet everyone the same email. But if you really want to work with a certain creator for a certain reason, make that clear, like you've watched their videos and you notice a theme, and you think there's some potential for a building on something there that's worth expounding upon.
So in addition to this kind of influencer marketing, where do you see the future of individual creators supporting themselves as a business going? We get this question most often in relation to podcasts.
Right.
Like, how are people going to monetize?
It's even shakier on YouTube, especially lately, just sort of because of where we're at. And I get it. The easy answer is just be PC and be super clean and never push any buttons. But like at a certain point, that's not where you want to be. You kind of want to be able to explore and do different things.
Yeah.
So you have to diversify your income. That's the simple answer. So at this point, I can use myself as an example. The channel obviously has ads on it, and that's been one version of income as an independent creator. There's also something called affiliate income, where you talk about products a lot. You might as well share the availability to buy those products. So Amazon has an affiliate system, B&H has an affiliate system. There's also a merch store. This is something not every creator can do, but if you can, why not? I very recently, super late, got into it, but like trying to make a sort of, people ask me all the time what sweatshirt I was wearing in videos, so I figured I might as well offer a sweatshirt at some point. You can turn that into sort of a fashion brand, if you will, and just having different ways of supporting the same thing when they all sort of point back to the same thing.
What about those paid subscriptions or even?
Oh, Patreon? The Patreon. So at a certain point, you can ask dedicated viewers who really want to support what you do directly if they want to contribute more. Oftentimes, they won't have a problem with that if they really like your work, or if your work isn't common. I think a lot of times if they feel like they can just find what you're doing somewhere else, then there's no reason for them to stick around or pay for it. But if what you do is like less frequent, or it's really high effort, or it's not something that they're going to find somewhere else, and that'll come from you working on your craft for a really long time, then oftentimes they'll have no problem deciding they want to help you out.
Cool. And when it comes to you, now that you're a pretty successful channel, what do those ratios look like? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I would say I'm still at a point where like the YouTube ads are probably 40 to 50%. I don't do a whole lot of sponsored stuff. Okay. If I did, that number would be much higher, but I think right now sponsored stuff is probably about 20%. So 40, 20, and then affiliate stuff being another 10. So we're at like, 70 now? So I guess, YouTube ads is probably bigger. YouTube ads is probably 50% of what the streams look like.
So you think your biggest problem right now as a creator is like figuring out how to do these more difficult things?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still on that quest of production. Like, I know my videos can be better. Like there's still always a gap between like a great YouTube video and a movie.
Of course.
Like everyone can tell a YouTube video from a movie and everything. But like ideally that like seamless like production where I can tell the story I want, show what I want to show, and not have any barriers in the way as far as production, that would be ideal. That's probably my biggest challenge. And then one of those, like, I feel like an octopus, like chopping off one of my arms and handing it to someone, but like having other people who can edit, having other people who can do set design, and can contribute on things that I'm doing 8 things at once. I wish someone else could take the load off me. That kind of stuff is also a challenge for me right now, but that's something I'm working on too.
That's interesting. All right. So I guess my last question for you then, man,
sure,
is your long-term goal. Like, what are you shooting for in 10, 15 years?
Well, 10 years. I'll be 35.
Over the hill.
Yeah, man. Wow.
No longer relevant.
I guess long-term goal, as much as I've said before, like I don't have long-term goals, but like most of my forward thinking is like 2 to 3 years out, like where I want the company to be, where I want the production process to be. But I guess if you look 10 years out, that's more of like media company type stuff. Like ideally there's a YouTube channel, maybe a second YouTube channel. There's a podcast. There's a production aspect to it where you can assist with other channels, things like that. And I think it's nowhere near on its way there yet. I think I'm still so focused on the actual video side of it and making that what I really want it to be, that I haven't really set foot in these other categories yet, but maybe someday soon.
You gonna make a movie?
It's funny you asked that. Like long form stuff, long form being like 45 minute, an hour long videos, has been fascinating to me on YouTube because it's been proven to be not that unreasonable, especially lately. So the Shane Dawsons of the world, like really hitting it home. I like to make a movie. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.